Hi everybody, it's Wayne Conrad. I'm here to talk today about building a Horizon View lab environment on top of Ravello Systems' wonderful lab-based cloud environment. Alright, let's get into my qualifications real quick before we get started so you can know why you should waste your valuable time listening to some idiot on the internet talk. I am a VCAP DCA, VMware Certified Advanced Professional for Data Center Administration and Data Center Design and Desktop Design, and I am never, ever sick at sea. I work for Pivot Technology Solutions. Specifically, I work for Sigma Solutions, a big VAR here in the Dallas and the Texas, Oklahoma, Louisiana, Arkansas, and Chicago, Illinois area. We have sister companies, Prosys on the East Coast, and ACS, not that ACS, on the West Coast. We also have ARC, Austin Ribbon and Computer, which is our mostly local government branch. My social media, I'm at WJ Conrad on Twitter, and that's my LinkedIn address. May or may not post that in the YouTube, depending on whether that's going to get me spam listed. So, let's talk about Ravello for a few minutes. Ravello was started by a bunch of the same guys who built the KVM hypervisor. And what they have done is they have built a hypervisor that runs on top of either Google's cloud or Amazon's cloud that actually can host ESXi, Windows, and everything else that you might need to build a lab as a, say, competitor to your work lab environment, or better yet, a comparison to your home labs environment. So why should you do Ravello? Price. Let me tell you, with a full environment of 56 gigs of RAM and 15 vCPUs, I'm paying $2.07 an hour to use it. Guess what? You can expense that to a customer. You can expense that to a project. Good luck trying to buy a $1,200 desktop expensing that. We'll see how your boss takes it. Ease of use and convenience. It is shockingly easy to get this thing running. Run it from a laptop. You could probably run it from a tablet. I don't know. I haven't tried, but it wouldn't surprise me. If you've got remote desktop and an HTML5 browser, wouldn't shock me at all to find out that it worked. Broad platform support, Windows, Linux, ESXi, Hyper-V, anything that you need to do, you can do on here. Only thing you can't really emulate is Fiber Channel. Other than that, who cares? iSCSI and NFS are good enough for me. And then blueprints and easy sharing. Once you've built a lab environment, it's very, very easy to make it a blueprint, share it with your coworkers, upload it to the repository so that other people can play with it, get feedback from other people, refine it. Honest to God, the platform is magic. I'm not saying it's perfect. It's got its drawbacks. I'm going to go into some of the issues I had when I was building my lab, but there is no perfect platform. This is just better than most. I wanted to give a quick thanks and a quick shout out to F5 Networks for making this happen. They hooked me up with some trial keys for their F5 Big IP load balancer that also does the APM module. And also at Sigma Solutions, my coworkers Brad Christian and Adam Gamble could have done this without you guys. Thank you so much. Okay, this is what the Ravello Systems interface looks like. You can see that we have two applications here. Applications are basically just groups of virtual machines. Think of them like a data center in VMware, or think about them as a folder. We just use these for logically separating different applications and figuring out what cloud they're going to run on, price it differently, have different startup orders, all that sort of thing. So as you can see here, all of my VMs are currently stopped because I just logged in. I'm going to go ahead and power these on. It's going to take a few minutes, so I'll show you what the power on process looks like. Start with your NAS, and you can either set an application auto stop where this will power off if you forget, which is important because you're getting billed by the hour, or never. I choose never because I'm really good about remembering to turn things off. In fact, while we're looking at that, let me show you how you can see exactly how much the lab costs. Easiest way I've found to do this is to just go in and modify the configuration of a server. Let's just add a disk real quick. I'm going to show you this because one of the things that you have to do when you're using a Windows image is you have to add a disk that uses the VirtIO controller. Just like with VMware, you want to be using a para-virtualized I/O device, and VirtIO is the option on here. So this new volume I just added right here, VirtIO. See it? I'll go ahead and remove my old VirtIO volume because there's nothing on there. You have to present one VirtIO volume to Windows. log into Windows, install the driver, and then you can switch your original hard drive off of IDE onto something that's much faster. So what happens when I click Save when I've edited a VM? Here's what happens. See how it asks me to update? Here's something important that you should know about Ravello. Whenever you change out anything, it's going to ask you to update. Change an ISO on a CD-ROM drive, change the network settings, add a disk, remove a disk, anything like that. Here's the bad news. When you click update, at some point within the next 30 or 45 seconds, you're going to have a network outage. That's probably fine for most of your VMs. However, if you're running ESXi hosts with iSCSI or NFS attached storage, those hosts are going down hard. Be very careful. Update's fine on Windows. You're going to lose your remote desktop connection. Nothing's going to kill you, but don't do it on ESXi unless you're suicidal. So let's go in here and click the update button, and I'll show you what that looks like. So you can see here's how many VMs, here's how many CPUs, here's the amount of memory I'm using, here's the amount of disk space I'm using, and the public IP addresses. And you can see they charge you different prices for computing, for volume storage, for public IP addresses, for network. Guess what? I'm using the Google Cloud because it performs a little bit better than Amazon. If I was using the Amazon Cloud, I could save 60 cents an hour. And as you can see, they'll be charging me about $2.50 an hour if I was not using a trial account. And as you can see, there's a start all new VMs automatically option. I don't recommend doing that. I think that that's too dangerous. So I'm going to discard this change now because we don't actually need to add a different drive to that VM, but you've gotten a good idea of what this is. So if you noticed, we've been talking a few minutes, the NAS is still not powered on yet. The good news is, when your application is getting powered off, you are charged $0. I could leave this here for a year and be charged no money. The bad news, powering on VMs takes a while. I suspect under the covers, it's copying the disk image file out of somebody else's storage system or Ravello's internal storage system onto the public cloud to start it. So, look. It might take 3 or 4 minutes to start a VM. And that kind of sucks when you've got multiple levels in your application. My application is practically 4 tiers, maybe 5 tiers at this point, depending on how you define it. Whatever. Like I said, no such thing as a perfect platform. I challenge you to beat this for $2 an hour. I priced out a system that's comparable to this today. It's $1,600 for a Skylake with enough RAM and a good motherboard and a 1 terabyte SSD and everything else. You cannot beat this pricing, period. You cannot beat these network simulation features. Everything here is really fantastic. So let's talk for a few minutes about what these VMs look like. As you'll notice, the services that are running on them are here to the side. I've got remote desktop on this one. I've got remote desktop, and I've got 2 FTP ports. So what I ended up doing is I had a hell of a time getting Windows 7 uploaded into Ravello so that I could use it. I uploaded it here to the library as a disk image, mounted it on the hosts, I mounted it on the vCenter, and I tried to use it that way. Didn't work. So what I ended up having to do is build an FTP server. Easy enough, put FileZilla on there, give it a public IP address, and probably change it off of the default FTP port unless you want to get hacked. So you can see I have the default RDP port, but my FTP ports for FTP and then passive transfers are relatively different, because I went in and changed the settings in FileZilla. It's really easy. So what I've got, a NAS, which just powered on, and I'll show you what the console looks like. See that? It's VNC. This thing is booting right now. It'll probably be done booting in about 2 minutes. Remember, just because you see the green power arrow does not mean it's fully powered on and into Windows, or in this case, into Ubuntu's NAS file system. 2 vCPUs, 4 gigs of memory. This is a bit more than the typical AutoLab configuration, and I realized I should take a step back and talk about AutoLab. Remember when I said that there's blueprints? AutoLab 2.6, the classic vSphere lab environment, is now available for Ravello. Instead of building on a nested ESXi host or VMware workstation, you can deploy this and roll it out easily. Now, I had to make some changes from the standard AutoLab. I had to add the View connection servers and the View Composer. And in my next video, I'll show you how to add an F5 Big IP load balancer with LTM and APM and hopefully we'll get it working tonight. I had it on here, but I decided that my video would probably be best to demonstrate that process for you. Alright, so now that the NAS is online, and you can see that Linux NAS Ubuntu 12.04.01 is running, we'll go ahead and get the domain controller started. After the domain controller comes up, bring the vCenter and the hosts up. I recommend starting the vCenter about a minute before the hosts, just so that it can be up and running and the hosts will register themselves properly without having to reconnect. I think you can probably start the View connection servers and the View composer at the same time as you start the vCenter. Remember, the critical services are DNS and Active Directory, so once this box is online, all four of these should be able to come up at once. And then you just wait for the hosts. Let's talk about a few other small issues I've had while I was building this system out. Unfortunately, I've already discussed the ISO mounting issue. But like I said, that's easy enough to work around. Just put an FTP server on your box and upload it from there. One of the other issues that I haven't discussed yet is that the maximum amount of memory for any given VM, and let's just create a VM real quick so I can show you what that looks like. Click that button right there. So, the maximum that you can scale this up to is 4 vCPUs and I believe 8 gigs of memory. And this is, I believe, a limitation based on the cloud provider itself, not anything inherent to the hypervisor, and this will change. Just as I believe that the problems with clicking update will eventually change. Like I said, this is a brand new platform. It's less than 6 months old. What we're looking at as a technical limitation today, August 29th, 2015, will not be a technical limitation for that much longer. Alright, so I'm going to pause this for a few minutes while my servers all get up and running, and I'll catch you on the flip side. Okay, as you can see, all of my other VMs are currently powering on, but I thought I'd take a minute to show you how you connect to some of these servers. Now, there's a console option which does VNC embedded in your browser. I found this to be kind of painful on laptops. 1366 by 768 screens. Once you add in this upper bar from Chrome, and then the Ravello Systems status bar, and then your task bar, you're going to be scrolling back and forth constantly just to get at stuff. Oh well, what are you going to do? Honestly, buy a better laptop. I don't know what else to tell you, but on a good desktop monitor, it's fine. It's great. I'm recording this video in 1920 by 1080, so you're not going to see that problem. So as you can see, I'm on the VNC, but nothing's showing up. Guess what? Windows is still booting. So let me show you really quick how you remote desktop into one of these boxes. See where it's got this port mapping for remote desktop and this DNS name and this IP address? Click this open button. Generates an RDP file. You click connect. And then if Windows is booted far enough, it's going to ask you for a username and password. In my case, because I rushed it just to demonstrate this to you, it's not going to do that. So like I said, you got to be patient with it. Just because the thing is finally copied to a cloud server and started up doesn't mean that it's actually booted yet. In fact, it really means the opposite. And as you can see, View Composer has now come online. I started View Composer a good 30 to 45 seconds after the vCenter, so I suspect that there's occasional issues with the cloud. In fact, I've actually seen behavior where remote desktop connections over long periods of time might die. When I first tried to get the Windows 7 ISO up to the cloud so I could build a VM with it, I tried copying it over remote desktop because I thought that would be easier. That didn't work, and that was a rabbit hole I wasted probably 2 hours of time with. My goal here really is to kind of show you where the bodies are buried, so if you decide to do this, it won't be so bad. And please, don't feel like because of all these problems, Ravello Systems is any kind of a bad platform. It's a fantastic platform. All these limitations are going to go away over time, especially as the public clouds evolve in reliability and robustness. Okay, so here we are a few minutes later with most of the stuff powered up. As you can see, I've got ESX 5.5 running on a public cloud. Who knew it was this easy? It's certainly not this easy if you tried, say, Google's cloud, Microsoft's cloud. Most of these other providers, they can't support nested ESX. Well, not until now. And the other thing you're going to notice is that I'm not using Flash. I'm not using Java. It's all HTML5. There's a on-screen keyboard, send Control-Alt-Delete, the internal IP, And in some cases, when you've got an external server like this View Composer, you get a DNS name, and you can just open Remote Desktop directly from Ravello to get in there. So here, let's log into the domain controller real quick, and I'll kind of show you around. The build order for AutoLab is a little bit weird. You have to build the domain controller before you can build anything else, because the domain controller has TFTP on it, which is used to build these 3 hosts. And it's also used in a couple places for the View Connection Server and other things to provide drivers, provide scripts, what have you. And specifically, until the domain controller is built, you can't access the NAS to edit the build file. Let me show you the build file real quick. Now, usually that's supposed to mount as a network drive, as the B drive on most of these computers. I don't know why it hasn't been doing this on my DC for a while, but here's what a mostly populated build store looks like. I have a couple of things like the view agent and the persona management and the extra funnel. Those aren't supposed to be there. This really isn't supposed to be there either, but I just kind of dumped it there because I wanted it to be available for multiple systems. But specifically, you need Power CLI, and then you need to have an ESXi installer, and you need to have a vCenter. Now, the capture process is a little bit different on AutoLab on Ravello than it is normally. On the NAS, you're supposed to add CD-ROM drives with the ISOs for the ESXi installer and the vCenter installer. Unfortunately, in my case, it recognized 5.5 material as 6.0. So I had to build a domain controller so I could log in and move the files around. But once I did that, and then I ran the upgrade script on the desktop, it recognized that I had 5.5 materials and built the floppy disks to install it. So it wasn't so bad. It was certainly a few hours that was kind of painful, but hey, you know what? I got it working. So if you look at the automate INI in the build file, so this is what the automate INI looks like for AutoLab. You can see that you specify the vCenter install, you specify whether or not you want to build View. Well, unfortunately, because the VMs aren't auto-populated for View, that doesn't work so well. The admin password is something that you're going to want to specify because otherwise it's going to complain at you, and frankly, it's not safe to leave it as the default. I've gone ahead and removed my admin password, though, because I didn't want you guys to see that. Honestly, in most lab environments, I would not deploy VUM. If the maximum is 4 CPUs and 8 gigs of memory, you're better off not having VUM on that vCenter to remove some of the load if you can. In fact, if you go out here, I will show you the reason that I have done a vCenter and a separate View Composer is that vCenter plus View Composer and 8 gigs of RAM is painful. I built a separate VM with 2 gigs of memory and 1 CPU, which should be enough for the 5 or 6 desktops that I'm going to run. Since each of these hosts has 6 gigs of memory, I was figuring maybe I'd run 1 4 gig image and a couple of 2 gig images on the other 2. I don't know yet. We're going to see. And I can always bump up the memory if I need to, although, like I said, there is a hard limit. I assume sooner or later Ravello will support 16 or 32 gig VMs, in which case you're going to be able to simulate 99% of the stuff in your environment. All right, so let's go take a look at the vCenter while I'm... Oh, you can see here I have FileZilla server running, and I just went ahead and changed the ports, and the upload process went relatively quickly after that. Now, one of the bad things about uploading to Ravello when you're uploading to the regular library is that the disk image uploader can be pretty slow. But let me show you the import process really quick. So you download the GUI VM import tool for Windows. It's relatively small, easy install, runs in Python in the background. Okay, so here's the Ravello VM import tool. You can upload directly from vCenter or vSphere. You can upload an OVF file, though occasionally there are OVF files that don't seem to work. But the easiest thing to do is just to upload an ISO file. So let me go ahead and upload an ISO file so that you can see what that looks like. Go out to my ISO share real quick. Remember, it uses Java-style disk naming, so sometimes it can be a pain to find things. So here, Windows Server 2003 R2 standard. Well, you click upload and you'll see a status. Unfortunately, That's all you get. It's uploading and then a progress bar. There's no speed indicator. There's no ETA indicator. I'll be honest with you. Kick off an upload and go do something else for a while, because if you watch it all day, you will make yourself crazy. Now, if you look out here, you can see on Resource Monitor that it is working, and you can kind of get an estimate there. You can see I'm uploading, well, that's in bytes a second, so you do the math. About a megabit a second, although now it's showing me maybe half, what is that? Somewhere in between 5 and 6 megabit a second upload. That's roughly what my home internet connection upload is like. So your home internet connection is really going to drive exactly how fast this is going to make it up to the Ravello cloud. If you've got slow home internet connection, well, unfortunately, you're just going to have to deal with it for now. So anyway, I've gone ahead and dialed into my View connection server just to show you that all the pieces are there. Now, granted, it's throwing a lot of red angry warnings because I'm using self-signed certificates for everything and I haven't accepted the thumbprint yet. But we have a 100% working View environment on top of Ravello Systems Cloud. I have 2 connection servers, a vCenter, and a security server. What else do you need? Now, I will be putting a F5 Big IP here in a few minutes, and I'll be using the APM module in that to replace a security server because I find that to be much safer, although there's debate on that. So I'm going to go ahead and show you how, if you wanted to, you could shut the entire lab down in a hurry. See the script menu right here on the vCenter? There's an included PowerShell script that will go ahead and power down all the hosts. It will power down all the VMs on those hosts. It will power down the vCenter. It will power down the NAS. It will power down the domain controller. So the shutdown process isn't nearly as bad as the power on process. Unfortunately, what it won't do is it won't power off the custom servers that I created, so I will still have to go in and do that. I'm not actually going to shut down the lab right now because I'm going to move right into my next video, but thank you guys so much for watching, and hopefully I've really enlightened for you how the whole Ravello Systems Lab works. Thank you.